Well, let's take you to that developing story in the United Kingdom. Media reports in the last hour or so indicating that Prime Minister Boris Johnson is expected to resign today. First, it was reports that he would step down as leader of the Conservative Party. Now we're hearing he may also resign as Prime Minister. Johnson is believed to have spoken to the party committee and has agreed to stand down. A new leader is then expected to be chosen at a conference due to be held in October. Now, just 24 hours ago, Johnson had vowed to hold on to his job and fight against mounting calls for his resignation. So far, more than 50 lawmakers have quit their positions in protest against his leadership. They include Ministers of Finance, Health and Children and Families. Let's talk more then about the developments in the United Kingdom. We can speak to Dr. Thomas Caygill, who's with Nottingham Trent University. Doctor, a very good afternoon to you. Thank you for your time. So Boris Johnson, it appears, will finally step down, but this was not the picture 24 hours ago. What's changed?
What's changed is it's become apparent, really, that Boris Johnson no longer had the confidence of the Conservative Parliamentary Party. This is why Sir Graham Brady, who is the chair of the Conservative Parliamentary Party, went to see Boris Johnson last night to inform him that he no longer believed that he had the confidence of the party, and that pending a rule change in that committee next week, they would trigger an additional vote of no confidence in his leadership, which he would likely lose. The other factor that's important here too is that given the scale of resignations from his government, I think at last count we're at 59. He was also struggling to fill those vacancies, which meant that he was struggling to form a government as well. So really, we ended up in the inevitable position where he couldn't continue as Prime Minister.
And let's talk about the timing of him, now we're told, stepping down imminently. This is not his first scandal in the last year alone. I mean, there was a controversy just recently to do with the Sue Gray report that looked into parties that were held at his Downing Street residence in contravention of COVID-19 regulations. There was a vote of no confidence in the Commons. He survived that. What about this scandal has finally convinced his cabinet and the broader Conservative Party that it's time for Johnson to go?
I think with the last vote of no confidence, it almost happened by accident. I think there was just such a loss of support within the parliamentary party that there wasn't really a coordinated effort to get rid of him. It was more of MPs feeling desperate and wanting to submit notices. And ever since that vote of no confidence, we've seen a number of by-election losses in previously safe Conservative seats, which has obviously scared Conservative MPs with an election due in the next couple of years. He was also booed outside the steps of St Paul's Cathedral during the Queen's Jubilee celebrations. Again, the fact that a Conservative Prime Minister is being booed by a pro-monarchist crowd is not a good sign. Again, the suggestions there that again, scared a number of Conservative MPs. And of course, the most recent issue this week, and from last week as well, has been the resignation of Chris Pincher as Deputy Chief Whip of allegations of sexual assault. And he's faced allegations in the past, and of course there are questions there of what the Prime Minister knew, where and when, and again, that became the straw that broke the camel's back. It led to another flurry of letters going into Graham Brady, and it also led to resignations of initially junior ministers and then of cabinet ministers as well. They were unwilling to go out and defend the Prime Minister's line, given the fact the line kept changing pretty much every day. It started off by saying he knew nothing about the allegations, to he was aware of rumours, to actually, yes, no, he was informed of allegations when he was Foreign Secretary, and Chris Pincher was a minister in the Foreign Office.
And just on that scandal, Chris Pincher, who is accused of sexually harassing young men, at this point, Boris Johnson, as you rightfully said, first pleaded ignorance, and then eventually it emerged that he in fact had received formal communication about these allegations of harassment. During the time when he was denying, or at least downplaying, the extent of the knowledge that he had about the accusations, you rightfully say then cabinet ministers went across the UK media basically repeating the cabinet line. So they too have been tainted by association. And I wonder how that's likely to affect a leadership race in a post-Johnson era.
There have been, yes, and there have been queries, and again, particularly a lot from backbench Conservative MPs saying why more members of the cabinet hadn't resigned. Of course, yesterday we saw a number of appointments So a new Chancellor, a new Education Secretary, and they've obviously both turned around today and told him he had to go. So again, there's a question there, particularly Nadine Zahawi, the Chancellor of the Exchequer, the new Chancellor of the Exchequer, was seen as a potential leadership contender. There's a concern that he might have contaminated himself by staying on in Johnson's government and ended up, forcing him to stand down just over 24 hours after accepting the position.
Boris Johnson, as a politician, yes, on the outside looks like, some would say, fairly disorganized man, doesn't look like the typical politician, right? But when you talk to people in the UK political circles, they talk about his skill and his ability to maneuver out of sticky situations. Why is he throwing in the towel? Was he completely out of options? Could he not have done something else, given that he is so notorious for working his way out of a mess?
Yeah, so in the UK, he's often referred to as a greased piglet, that he can escape from any situation. Look, I think he was backed into a corner here, and there weren't many escape routes left. I mean, the one escape route that he had been threatening was that he'd use the royal prerogative powers to dissolve Parliament and call an election, but of course that would draw the Queen into political controversy, which is a big no-no. So really, I think a mixture of that being the only route and not being a particularly savoury route really has forced him to consider his options overnight, and of course, as you mentioned at the beginning, announce his resignation, at least at the moment, as leader of the Conservative Party.
He won the election in 2019 because he promised to get Brexit done. There was a great deal of frustration with his predecessor, Theresa May, and how she'd handled that process. When you cast your eyes towards legacy, the question of what Boris Johnson will be remembered for, what do you think will be his most defining moment? Will it be the scandals or indeed getting Brexit done?
I think it'll be a mixture of both. So he'll be remembered as a Prime Minister that got Brexit done. As you mentioned, Theresa May had a really hard slog trying to get her deal through. It's what led to her toppling as Prime Minister and leader of the party. As also, he'll get credit certainly for getting Brexit done and kind of leading Britain out of the quagmire that it was in terms of negotiations. I think he'll get credibility and credit too for the COVID-19 vaccine rollout as well, which went very well in the UK. But again, I think given the scandals, and this has been going on really since October. It started off with Owen Paterson, a lobbying scandal. He was a backbench MP, and Boris tried to pull out all the stops to prevent him being a recall ballot being triggered and him forced out of his position as an MP. And it all really flowed from there. So a great deal of time, particularly the last 7-8 months, the government has been dogged by scandal, so that will inevitably form part of his legacy. Unfortunately, again, it's what people remember John Major for when his government was coming to an end in 1997.
Dr. Thomas Caygill with Nottingham Trent University. Good to have your time, sir. Thank you.